Hey everyone, Ida from PJP here, and welcome back to Rivalries Thursday. So this week we're gonna cover, dare I say, my favorite rivalry. And this is the one between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. I say it's my favorite rivalry because of all the lore surrounding their rivalry. Like, there's so much juicy stuff. So I'm trying to keep this brief, but if this ends up a long video, apologies, because there's just a lot to dissect. And if you guys want me to do a long form video on it, dive more into it, etc., let me know. But this is, I want to say, the Cliff Notes version of what happened. So let's get started. So on one hand, we have Lewis Hamilton, British racing driver, 7-time world champion. We did a whole episode on him on the podcast for Silverstone last year. So if you want to know more about him, check that out. And then actually this week we're gonna release a Nico episode. So if you want to have more infos on his career in general, him as a person, etc., keep an eye out for that. So, but what happened between those two? Why is this the whole shebang, in my opinion? So it's basically their relationship, I want to say, was deeply, or is still deeply, rooted in them being childhood friends. So they first crossed paths as karting prodigies and became friends on track. They grew up together in the competitive world, and they were basically each other's rock, from what I know. And like, because they were so different, like in terms of driving styles, they oftentimes like exchanged notes and like basically pushed each other to be their best version in karting. And that whole relationship, that whole dynamic led them to become who they were, like as good as they were in karting, and then later on in different series. However, as they progressed into Formula One, their friendship evolved into a fierce rivalry, especially once they became teammates in 2013 when Lewis joined Mercedes, Nico already being there since they joined the grid in 2010. And basically, because Mercedes was dominating so much, and because as I've said before, with teammates often having fierce competition, because they're like, while yes, there's the Constructors' Championship and the teammates who do well, ultimately at the end of the day, for the drivers themselves, it's all about the Drivers' Championship. So basically, their friendship turned very sour from what I can tell. And basically, so they went from, there's this one scene in 2008, when Nico was driving for Williams and Lewis was still at McLaren, where they ended up on the podium together. And in the cool down room, they were running to each other and just like bear hugging each other and like being super excited. And it went from that, and even in their karting days, they like talked about them both ending up in Formula One and how awesome it would be, how awesome them being teammates would be to 2015-16, where, for example, Lewis would end up saying in an interview, "We're not friends" about Nico. And of course, the infamous Barcelona GP in 2016, where the both of them were racing very close to each other, and basically one of them made a mistake, causing both of them to crash out of the race, and them both crashing out, basically number one and two crashing out, actually led to Max at 18 years old to win his first race. And so they went from, as I said, friends, from being supportive of each other to basically, I want to say pointing fingers. And I mean, like, there's just a lot of, and that's, God, I want to tell you guys so much about this, but I'm trying to keep this short, so bear with me. So basically, like, there's so much lore, like, for example, Ron Dennis, that ran McLaren back in the day, like, basically talked about them being super competitive from the get-go, like, even off the track having like pizza eating contests, like who could finish their pizza faster, or like trashing, like them sharing a hotel room and them trashing it and stuff like that, and or like going on vacation together, or when Lewis first moved to Monaco, him staying at Nico's house, but even to this, that they don't necessarily talk anymore, or like when they do talk, like at least publicly, I want to say this is all when they talk publicly or interact publicly, it is always a bit awkward. Because of all that tension, because of how much Nico has come out and said that he basically retired after 2016 because of how mentally exhausting that season was, and that he just couldn't handle it, kind of. And like, so seeing that and then juxtaposing it with when Nico, who's now a Sky Sports commentator, interviewer, etc., basically he does a lot of the post-race interviews, like of the top three after races, like and because Lewis is still very much a dominant, or at least a top three finisher, he often gets in, basically Nico often interviews him, and so that tension, like, if you want to see what I mean, Google or YouTube Spain 2023 podium interviews. It was one of the more recent times where they interviewed each other, and it being Spain, of course, added, at least in the media's eyes, or everyone's like every like third party's eyes, added another layer because of what happened in 2016 in Spain, basically. And it's just interesting to see that awkward dynamic. At the same time, though, there is, like, Nico has come out and said, he's still my best friend in my heart, like, later in 2023. So that was very interesting. Like, there's always, like, I don't know whether you guys know this idea of the invisible string tying people together. I feel like that very much applies to them, because while there is tension, I feel like, and they basically destroyed each other in 2015, 2016, there is still this invisible pull between the two, because, as I said, late last year, 2023, Nico came out and said that he's still my best friend in my heart, for example. And also, more recently, Nico did an interview with, I think it was Süddeutsche Zeitung. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's a German newspaper, but I'm not 100% sure which one. But basically, he said that Lewis still sends his girls, Nico's girls, a huge box of gifts every single Christmas. And like, even that, like, yes, they destroyed each other in 2016, but there's like still this thing going on. And I feel like their rivalry or like their situation, I don't want to call it a rivalry at this point because they're not competing against each other anymore, but basically, from what I can tell, it's very much like if one of them, or both of them really, could get over their, dare I say, egos, they could fix it, because they still mention each other unprompted. Like, I think Lewis on stage in Spain last year randomly, unprompted, mentioned Nico. Like, and he never does that. And so, like, they're still on each other's minds. And so I feel like it's only a matter of time until they hopefully make up. Hopefully. Granted, maybe they've already made up in private, but the public just doesn't know. Who knows? I mean, they still live in the same building. Come on. And also, fun fact, Nico has lived in that building in Monaco since he was a kid. So, meaning that Lewis, when he stayed with Nico, when he first moved to Monaco, was literally like, this is where I want to live, like literally the building. Just a side note. There's so many side notes I could do on this, or examples of like stuff, but I think I'm just gonna leave it here, and because I could literally rant about them for hours, but I'm not going to, because it's just, I know not everyone's as interested, as invested as I am. So I'm gonna leave you guys with these examples, and if you wanna know more, let me know. And I would highly encourage you to Google things like Civil War, Brocedes, and stuff like that if you wanna know more. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you guys next week.